Welcome to Gamer Retail Ramblings, episode number 34. I'm your host, Travis Severance. 35? Is that really true? 35. Your host, Travis Severance, coming to you live from Millennium Game Studios in Rochester, New York today. We are going to talk all about trade shows. GAMA is on the way, so I'll be leaving on a plane Sunday morning to get to hopefully not flooded Louisville I think I'm there for 5 days. Thank you to everybody that stopped in. It's been a couple of weeks. Everybody's been on vacation. Thank you to everybody that stopped in and watched the episode all about distribution. I certainly got a lot of different feedback from that. Some of the distributors were less happy than others, but that's sort of the way the nature of a topic like that sort of goes, and I'm okay. There are times, whether you're a friend of mine on Facebook or not, where my commentary for things is direct, and some people like direct and they appreciate that feedback and they take that feedback and they go with it, and other people decide they're going to do yawn emojis instead. So, there's two choices that you can do there on a customer service end of it. There's one that moves things forward and there's one that sort of sets things back. So the choice is sort of yours. GAMA is full industry. All of the game industry will be there. So publishers, distributors, creators, media, I'll be there, retailers, tons of folks there. It's a big giant melting pot of people from Europe and Australia and South America as well. So it's a big old show with a whole bunch of different seminars and things like that. The important thing to realize about trade shows and things like that is you're spending time away from your business. There's hopefully a value that you bring to your business. So how are you going to take the time that you're not working on your business to go to that show and figure out exactly what your goals are and what you're looking to do at that particular show? So the first thing that you need to do is you need to set goals and you need to plan on that. But I'm going to go through just some personal stuff before I get into the phase where I start talking to you about show planning and things like that. So from a hygiene and like a personal care perspective, which this sounds crazy, but it's just something that you have to think about when you're traveling, especially whether you're traveling internationally or not. There's a whole bunch of people with a whole bunch of different things floating around. So staying hydrated is super important. You're going to be on your feet all day. You're going to be wandering around, energy drinks and different things like that. Make sure you drink some water during the day. Wash your hands, super, super critical. If you're somebody that shakes a lot of hands, I would suggest maybe fist bumps. Fish bumps is a completely different episode. We'll do that sometime. But wash your hands. Fist bumps are good. I'm not a big hugger. That's just not my thing. I don't do a lot of hugging. Believe it or not, I know it's going to be hard for those of you that have watched the episode before to realize that that's not the case, but I don't hug. It just isn't a thing that I do. Washing your hands before you eat, obviously super critical. Wear comfortable shoes. I've seen a bunch of people before go to these shows with brand new shoes and things like that, and their feet just ache because you're on your feet the entire time mostly. So comfortable pair of shoes is super critical, as well as a fresh pair of socks. The midday sock change is just divine, especially if you're wearing dress shoes or that sort of thing. And then the last thing is to bring some breath mints or some gum with you as well. Whether you're a coffee drinker like I am, or you're going to be talking a lot and stuff like that, the worst thing that you can do is introduce you to somebody and have terrible breath and they just don't want to continue having the conversation. So those are my 4 sort of quick personal hygiene and trade show care for yourself, so that you're presenting yourself in a good way to the people that you're talking to. So pre-show planning, like I said, set some goals. When you talk about goals, when we look at goals, when I look at goals, a bunch of different things that I want to do when I'm at a show. Typically, it's find new product. That's super critical for me as a retailer. This is a lot of times the first time that I've gotten to look at something in person since typically PAX Unplugged, which PAX Unplugged has a nice array of Spiel des Jahres games or Essen games that are there as well. So being able to interact with games for the first time, that's sort of the next 6 months, is critical for me to be able to assess what I want to buy. So make sure that you take a look at that. That's a big part of the reason that I go to the show. Networking, super important as well. I want to build stronger relationships with publishers that are sort of on the rise, solidify some relationships with the publishers that I've been working with continually for the last 20 years. And it's also about discovery as well. So there'll be a whole bunch of publishers in the hall that I may or may not have a relationship with. And a lot of times it's really important to sort of establish a baseline relationship with a new publisher, because someday they may be a really, really important publisher to you, and starting when they're smaller and giving them a chance to be able to pitch that game is important. A good example of that was a couple of years back, I was introduced to the folks at Rowan, Rook & Descartes. they're a big part of our role-playing community now in terms of the books that we have and that we sell. But it was starting it off with a conversation with them on the floor at GAMA, and then building that relationship. They participated in the Free RPG Day box last year, and quality interactions that we've had with them have been fantastic, myself and a whole bunch of other retailers, and it started at the GAMA trade show. It's important to make sure that you're setting some kind of goals, have a plan, decide what you're going to do. It's a good place to learn what the latest trends are and get yourself a good dose of education, and I'll get into that a little bit further along as well. You want to spend a little bit of time sort of mapping out the show floor, decide what you want to do in terms of your path to get into the show and to booths, and decide where you want to go and how much ground you want to cover. I mean, there's like 50 hours of show hall, so you should have plenty of time to get there between the Wednesday and Thursday. All kinds of time to be able to talk and discuss and have side conversations with anybody that you want to. So it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. Take your time, go through the booths, introduce yourself, make sure that you have business cards on you, that sort of thing. Make sure that you also have some kind of a prioritization list too. So there's the people that I have to see, there's the people that I'd like to see, there's the people that I don't even want to talk to, and then there's new people that I don't even know yet. So that's sort of the melting pot of the mix that I have as far as like what happens when I get on the floor itself. If you can schedule meetings in advance, especially with, there's two types of meetings that I tend to schedule before I go to the show. There's people that I need more communication with, whether it's I'm dealing with a consistent issue with something to do with their business and I need to schedule some FaceTime with them to figure out why that continues to be a problem so that I can get some better understanding and some perspective. And then the other meetings are typically publishers or even distributors sometimes, or sometimes designers that want retail perspective because they're working on some new initiative. Those conversations may not be anything that's actually going to physically happen this year. It may be something that's coming next year. Sometimes it's 2 years out, or it's a piece of technology or something like that that they're working on, or some way that they want to bring a product to market and they have questions for that. So I do a good chunk of those meetings. If you're new to the industry or you're just going to your GAMA for the first time, you're probably not going to be involved in a lot of those meetings that are going on. There's a lot of that meeting space that's happening. So when I don't spend time inside the seminar rooms, it's typically because I have a pretty full schedule between the stuff that I'm doing at Millennium, the stuff that I'm doing for Game Center, the stuff that we're doing for Gaming Days LLC, which is Free RPG Day, and the consultation work that I do as well with a handful of clients. My schedule is pretty jammed up, and this is a time of year when I get to talk to people that are decision makers and stuff like that. So I have to make sure that I carve out priorities on who I want to meet with and who I want to have those conversations with, and make sure that I do those meetings, because when I get to the show, there's just so much stuff going on. Things change on a dime. My schedule's pretty full, but occasionally I'll take a side meeting, or if I need to do an evening meeting or an early breakfast or things like that, those sort of adjustments I make on the fly when I'm there. If you're new and you're just sort of getting your footing and stuff like that, you probably won't need to worry about that. Not to say that your opinion on stuff doesn't matter, but a lot of times, I think early on, one of the things that I did really well, believe it or not, was I shut up and I just listened. And I spent my first couple of years at trade shows not really saying much of anything at all and just listening. I built some relationships with some of the publishers. I built some relationships with some of the retailers and things like that. But I didn't feel like I had a whole hell of a lot to contribute because I didn't have a lot of experience. I was a manager at the time. I didn't even own the store that I was representing at that point. So I just listened to certain people, and Facebook wasn't a thing. There was forums and things like that where I started following some people, and I sort of built my understanding of the industry there. I think if I could critique what I did back then, I was a sponge, but I wasn't a sponge with a good filter. So some of the people that I was paying attention to, whether it was in the retail segment or the publishing segment, weren't actually good advocates. They were either bad actors, or they would say one thing and their actual business would do another thing. So just be cautious about some of the relationships that you form, that the person that you're talking to isn't just talking, they're actually genuine with what they're doing with their business and things like that. And a lot of times these days, it's easier to figure that out. You can sniff it out by, following their store on Facebook a lot of times, seeing how active they are with that sort of thing, and seeing what they have going on in that space. Not to say that everything is social media, but it can give you a good idea if somebody's sort of pretending. Business cards and notebooks, those are fairly standard. You have to have a business card. You can't go to a trade show without a business card. If you don't have a business card, I don't know how you do business in the industry over the long term, because follow-ups are really difficult to do. I know some people are going to say, well, I've got this fancy tech dot card that automatically syncs to your phone if you scan the QR code and stuff like that. If you want somebody to have all that information, go for it. I'm just a paper business card type of guy. Those things are not my jam right now. Seminars and educational sessions. So pre-pandemic, myself and a handful of my friends were on the GAMA Retail board, and I was the chairperson for a period of time as well. So I served 4 years. Our responsibility as a GAMA Retail board, among other things, was to make sure that the seminar block for all the retailer to retailer seminars was constructed, that we had good speakers, that we had good topics. We sort of built the blocks of what that looked like to make sure that there was education in all these different spaces. And we were given basically a schedule grid by the person that was the executive director at the time. And he said, this is what you guys have for available space. These are the rooms that you have. These are the times that you have. Fill those things out. So when I was in charge of doing that and working with another team, there were a handful of different categories of seminars that we did our best to sort of try to facilitate in terms of education, because they were important to retail businesses, and they were also important in a general function to new people coming in, maybe medium experienced retailers, and also some long in the tooth retailers. We never codified the schedule in a way that said beginners only, because part of that was that there are some beginner things that retailers that have been around for a long time could get some real value in. So I don't think that there's a lot of value in saying that this is just beginner friendly, and I don't know if they do that now or not, but just allowing people to sort of self-select what seminars they go into is a little bit better. But as far as the topics for seminars and sort of a broad seminar category that I look at and that I want to see when it comes to trade shows or it comes to sort of educational opportunities are the following. Business and financial management. So covering topics like pricing strategies, inventory control, and cash flow management. Those things are stuff that we deal with on a daily basis. They are things that retailers have to have some ability and some acumen in. So it's good to make sure that if you're starting out or you're new and you don't understand some of that stuff, having seminars that take care of that is important. Number 2 is marketing and community engagement. Those sort of things go hand in hand. Marketing to some degree is community engagement, though not as direct as something like responding on a Discord channel or responding into a Facebook thing. Marketing and communication is really important. So best practices for social media, how to run events, customer loyalty programs, that sort of thing, direct engagement initiatives with the community. Number 3 would be organized play and event management, which sort of just springs off of exactly what marketing and community engagement is. Most likely have a store that has some sort of play space in it. Whether you're a small store or a big store, you probably have some tables somewheres. Most of the successful retailers in the country have the ability to run events. Now, that size and that shape are different, which is important. You want to talk to retailers, get to know other retailers that have a similar square footage or a similar outlook to your business and be able to compare notes with them, because you're comparing apples to apples rather than apples and avocados. E-commerce and online sales. A good chunk of brick and mortar at this point has some sort of an existence on e-commerce. And if you don't, it's nice to have classes that also teach that. Retail operations and customer experience. This is all about things like optimizing your store layout, staff training, and just having the ability to create a store environment that's pretty frictionless when it comes to shoppers shopping in your store. Number 6 is industry trends and product knowledge. So how do you keep up with new releases, collectible markets, emerging game categories, that sort of thing? Like, what's the new hotness when it comes to certain areas of the store? A couple episodes ago, I talked about Gundam. I feel like that's very much an emerging brand. Number 7 would be distribution and supplier relationships. So building strong partnerships with distributors and also talking with suppliers and being able to secure better deals or getting special show pricing and that sort of stuff. That's an important part of what we do as far as trying to keep our costs as low as possible. And number 8 is legal and compliance issues. Not the most fun seminar topics out there, but very critical in terms of, this is how you pay your taxes. This is what an accountant is. You cover specific things about labor laws and accessibility requirements and things like that. So when I'm looking at seminar grids and I'm looking at what different shows have to offer, these are sort of the categories that I'm looking in, and I want to see stuff from that, because as a retailer, I deal with all of those different categories that I mentioned in some capacity, and some things I'm better than others at, and some things I'm interested in getting better at. So if you take a look at the GAMA grid, and you can pull it out in an Excel file, which is what I did with my manager, and you go down through it and you take a look at what the retailers are doing and how they're offering that sort of stuff, you can tell from that list that I just gave you that there's a whole bunch of different seminars that fit into those. Some of them cross over 2 or 3 of those different topics and things like that. So pick and choose the things that you think you're going to get the most education out of. Different seminars are going to be done in a different way. And just because you listen to a seminar from one person on a topic that you didn't really, vibe with or whatever, doesn't mean that you shouldn't check out that topic 3 hours later that's similar, that's given by somebody else, because it might just be the way that they communicate with you is more reasonable, or you can understand it better, so it's a better value for your business. Moving on from education, I'll talk about navigating the show floor. So I talked about that a little bit. The show floor is very important. Wednesday, they're going to open the doors at noon or 1 o'clock. I forget what time exactly. And then I think there's a good chunk of time on Thursday as well, 12 hours or 18 hours or however many hours it is. It's a long time for the show floor. There's a lot of vendors in there. It's kind of L-shaped if they're using the same setup as they did last year. Make sure you have some priorities in there. You can pre-mark that ahead of time. Get to the people that you want to see. A lot of times what I'll do is, especially when there's a two-day floor, I will prioritize getting to the people that I need to see on the floor on day one. A lot of times what'll happen is that will instigate a conversation where I need to go back, and sometimes I need to talk to my other team members about what they're dealing with, and then I want to be able to have another time to engage with them on the second day. So I get my priorities or any part of my business that has friction in it the first day. I try to get that done. So I try to get an understanding, because I want to come back to the team here and make sure that we have things ironed out. That doesn't mean that everything that I find out I'm going to love or I'm going to embrace or I'm thrilled about, but at least I have the best information that I have to continue forward with that particular publisher or that particular distributor or that kind of an event or whatever the current challenge is when it comes to that. There's going to be a whole bunch of new publishers that are on that floor. They're of various different sizes. Not all of them are set up to work well with retail. So make sure that you have a list of questions that you want to ask them, that they have some understanding about what you're talking about, because sometimes they just get a booth and they don't know anything about retail. There was a publisher that I was really frustrated at last year that had a booth in the hall, and they didn't have any products to sell to retail at all. It was just a booth in the hall. They had products that I wanted to buy, but there was no setup for me to be able to buy them from them in any real way. They didn't have distribution. They didn't have direct buying. I didn't really understand the point of them being in the hall. Now, fast forward, 6 or 8 months from the show, they did end up coming through distribution, so good on them that they had some meetings and things like that. But that was probably a situation where they should have talked or figured out a little bit more about the show, and maybe the booth wasn't the best idea for them. So make sure that you can talk to them about things like shipping terms, pricing, payment portals. A lot of people are set up these days where they only do ACH, which is frustrating to me because I hate dealing with ACH specifically because my bank's not good at it. I'd rather have a PayPal option or a credit card option or that sort of thing in place, but they don't always have that. Take notes and pictures of products for reference later. I do that a lot when I walk around the hall to be able to reference back. Sometimes it's just business cards actually to do a follow-up because I don't have time for that booth. Don't be afraid to introduce yourself to fellow retailers. You see a retailer saying something that you appreciate or that you enjoy or you think matches up with you, whether they're in seminars or they're at dinner or lunch with you or whatever, make sure that you have a business card available. Some of the best relationships that I've made in the industry have happened because of the trade show. Post-show follow-up, we go there, we get all excited, we get jazzed up. There's a whole bunch of new initiatives that we want to come back with. We've got all these great ideas and those sort of things. And I made the mistake early on in my career. I would come back with 50 ideas and I would try to put them all into place immediately. And my team was like, what's going on here? We're changing this, we're changing that, we're changing the other thing. My suggestion would be to look at one thing and just change one thing a month, whatever that is, and then move forward. And if you get to the end of the year and you've changed 12 things, your business is going to be significantly better, and it's going to be able to adapt and absorb those changes and those decisions a lot easier than if you come back and you just empty a notebook in front of them and you're going to completely change it. That's not to say that your business doesn't need that kind of facelift. Sometimes when you go to a show, it will become very apparent that yes, you do need to make a lot of changes. You also have to do that in a certain time frame where you can catch up with it, because if you start doing too many things and changing too many things, then you're going to lose efficiencies, you're going to lose employee morale. Sometimes the customers end up taking a back seat while you're in the middle of all kinds of different things. If you got to save your business, you got to save your business. But in general, try to come back and make sure that it's something that's palpable for your team or yourself to be able to handle and manage, and take it slow. Don't make mistakes. You want to make sure that you send some follow-up emails too. It's a little bit old school, but if you have a good meeting with somebody, sending them a follow-up email that's just specifically, hey, thanks for spending the time to talk to me. Yeah, I mean, and follow up on those business cards and things like that. Most of the show specials end up being timing based. If you get really lost in it and you get back home and things are going a mile a minute and you're catching up and that sort of stuff, most of the publishers, even if there's timing on something that's actionable with a show special, if you're within a couple of days, they'll typically make an adjustment and allow you to participate on that. I mean, hopefully whatever the show special is that they're doing is not going to be something that's going to have a negative impact on them. Some of them are going to be running around like crazy people because there's 3 shows back to back to back and they're traveling to all those shows, so it's going to be challenging and rough on them. So just keep that in mind. So to sort of wrap up, make sure that you approach it with a plan, have goals, figure out what your cost is while you're away from the business, and sort of try to make sure that you're producing enough profit when you get back to make trade shows something that you can consider measuring and in it to be successful. Make friends where you can. Use this to strengthen your relationships. Use this to bring in new products. Use this to as a time to introduce yourself and let people know about your business. Having something that you can show them about your business that's important or where you're at, and introducing yourself to people can make things so much easier when you're dealing with a lack of communication or you're dealing with something that just doesn't make sense. Sometimes things just don't make sense, but all the time when you're there, you can have at least somebody try to sort out the reason why X and Y are the way that they are. So don't be shy about going up. It's certainly a contact sport when we're there. Like, these relationships that you build are going to determine success for your business in the future. So take your time. The other thing that I would say too is, if you're going to a publisher seminar and there's publishers there, or there's distributors there, and they're giving a seminar, it's very poor form if you use that seminar opportunity as a time to ambush them with a problem. These are all people. Everybody in the industry is a person. We're all dealing with some level of consternation or different challenges or things like that. That's not the time to throw a tomato at somebody and say, well, you guys are shit because of this and this and this and this and this. Now, if they ask for unsolicited feedback, have at it. But most of the time, it's much, much better and more appropriate that you get the person's business card or you get their contact information. You try to talk to them when they don't have a room full of people where you've decided that you're going to embarrass them. When I came into the industry, there was a lot of that going on. And it certainly wasn't the way that I ended up making it through the industry, was by taking the people that were my business partners and calling them out in the middle of a room with a couple of hundred people in them and telling them that they're shit and making things better. That's why we deal with a bunch of challenges that we do as a retailer. Can you have those conversations? Can they be terse conversations? Without a doubt. But putting somebody in the spot in the middle of the seminar is just not a professional way to try to handle that. And it's probably not going to get you what you're looking to get for anyways. So give a little bit of grace, give a little bit of latitude. That's not the time to have that conversation. There's plenty of time on the floor. There's plenty of time at their booth. There's plenty of other times when you can have that conversation with them about what your frustrations are, but don't do it in the middle of a seminar unless they ask for unsolicited feedback. If they ask for unsolicited feedback, and even then, I think I would raise my hand and I would caveat that, because sometimes I can be pretty brutal and pretty direct, and it's not the kind of thing that I want to do in an open room full of people, because regardless about how I feel about some of the craziness that we deal with in the industry at a retail level, I'm also understanding that everybody else is also trying to survive, regardless of the decisions that they make or how much I think that their business is slanted away from the benefit of retail. I can either navigate that business properly or I cannot navigate that business properly. And don't get me wrong, you're going to have the opportunity to have some conversations with people that you wouldn't normally get to have online. So if you decide you want to unload on them, you can do that, but it's going to shape how they interact with your business moving forward, good, bad, or indifferent. I'm going to wrap it up for today. If you have a GAMA experience or a tip to share, feel free to drop something in the comments. If you've had the opportunity to go to the show before, there's something that you feel like I missed out on the mentioning in this episode, definitely throw it down in the bottom of the comments and talk to people about that. GAMA's got a new YouTube channel as well, so if you're listening to this, go and give them a like. I know they're trying to grow that community a little bit. They got some pushback on people saying that some of their videos were too political and yada, yada, yada. I don't know, guys. Like, the best part about YouTube is I can either click on a video or I can not click on a video. If I think it's important, then I will do it. If I don't think it's important, that's fine. And I don't need to comment about that all the time because it's not relevant to what they're trying to do. They're trying to grow a community. They're trying to do the best that they can as far as getting information out to them. They're trying to have a more modern channel to be able to do that. So, take the time and support that. And if you like what you're hearing here, make sure you click that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything. If you run into me, you see me at Louisville, feel free to stop by and introduce yourself. I may be running around with my hair on fire because that's typically the way that show goes. But I'll be sure to say hi and make sure you let me know how things are going on this side of things. Other than that, thanks for tuning in, and happy gaming, everybody.